Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Dollars. Welcome back to the channel. It's another day, another dollar video. This time I'm bringing you the Savages from the 6K Money and Casper TNG. I know y'all been waiting for this ever since it dropped. I've been waiting for this. Just needed to find the right time because this is 40 minutes long. And that's a lot of time. In 40 minutes, I could do 10 reactions, you know? So I ain't doing too many reactions the next couple of days. I'm gonna take it easy. But I do want to do different content for you guys. I do want to bring some vlogs. I want to do some story times. I want to, switch it up a little bit on the channel. I know you guys want to get to know a little bit more about me. And I try to give you guys different, information about me when I do the reactions if it relates to me. And I try to do that within the reactions. But a lot of y'all want these story times, so I'm gonna do that for y'all. And in the future, I am probably gonna have a separate channel that's just for vlogging and story times and stuff like that. I want to keep the reaction channel separate because on this channel is just mostly music reactions, movie trailers, but I do want to bring movie reactions too, TV reactions as well, because what I'll do is I'll break it down. Like I'll have half the reaction on the channel, and then on the Patreon I'll put the full movie and stuff like that. So I'm just brainstorming ideas right now at the moment because it's been getting a little stale. I've been feeling like not bored of this because I love doing this. It's just I gotta find something to separate myself from the rest of these guys because I'm seeing a lot of mini-me's. It's a lot of mini-me's popping up, and it's like we're not the same. You feel me? Like it's not the same. I take this shit seriously. I put a lot of effort into this shit to bring the best content as possible. So I gotta do something different. I don't like to be copying, like doing the same shit everybody's doing. And when it comes to reactions, there's always gonna be people reacting to the same shit. So that's not what I'm mad about. It's not even that. But it's just I like to do things differently. Anyway, let's hop in this joint. Let's check this out. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Let's get it.
Listen close when I'm spitting, I got the toast, yeah, that's smithing. Plus I told you it's war, and all my youngins, they gripping.
Every time you see me with
my son was spitting them bars before he switched it up. Shout out to Mind So 6 too, man.
So there's no doubt in my mind that you've heard of these two already. Toronto rappers K Money and Casper TNG. Even if you're not from the city, you've probably stumbled across their music at some point or another, or saw their faces on a news report. They're the brothers who made headlines in June of 2018 after they were involved in an epic police chase through the downtown streets, which looked like gameplay straight out of Grand Theft Auto. They swerved through traffic, ran red lights, hit other cars, and even drove down a long stretch of sidewalk before they eventually crashed.
They wildin', bro.
It turns out that one of Casper's lyrics seemed to be the truth.
If the cops come behind me, dash, I'd be shot to make.
Not only did he and his accomplices do the dash in a car, but also on foot. Unfortunately though, they weren't fast enough and couldn't outrun the law. The pursuit ended with all the suspects who were in the vehicle being caught. K-Money and Casper, along with two others, including their cousin and fellow rapper RK, were charged with almost 100
RK
offenses.
was with them too?
Their arrests were a major blow to the music careers of both brothers, since they were in their prime and seeing rapidly growing success with almost every song they released. Now first, I wanted to make this another rise and fall video, since I think it meets the criteria, but I understand that some people, probably their hardcore fans, would be triggered by that title, and I get it. You could argue that the brothers have certainly seen a rise, but haven't.
Well, as far as them being locked up in their prime, sometimes that makes them even hotter. Like if you get locked up when you on top of the game and you come back out, it's still, it's like nothing ever changed. Look what happened to Wayne. Wayne did that little bullet, I think it was on Rikers. He came out even hotter. Like, so sometimes a good jail bid is good for the career, but don't get locked up, guys.
Haven't yet seen a fall, with their arrest being just a minor setback for now. There's even word that Casper could be getting out as soon as April of this year. That being said, I think that anytime someone goes to jail, it should count as a fall, even if it's just temporary. That's not to say they won't make a comeback once they're released. They probably will, but spending years incarcerated can be detrimental for anyone, especially if you're a well-known rapper. You see, when you're locked up, you can't really drop any new music to further your career. Well, in some cases you can, if you get your hands on a phone or some sort of device that records audio, which is risky, but it has been done before.
Well, what about
But
the
even
music
then,
they
you still
recorded
can't shoot
before they
music
went in?
videos, which
You should be able to
definitely
drop
helps
that.
promote a song.
It's the very definition of gangsta rap. The recording studio, the Northwest Correctional Complex. And the video set, the inside of a prison cell. The subject matter.
Okay, correction. You can't shoot high quality music videos. Plus, without a physical presence in the outside world, you can only do so much and get so far. And for more popular rappers, not being able to do shows is just one of the many cons of being a con. For them, spending time in jail is essentially losing money. Along with that, the music industry generally has a short attention span, so it takes some effort to stay relevant while behind bars. Some rappers end up having to put out older, pre-recorded songs to keep up with the demand from their fans. An example is K-Money and Casper, and their track Like Me, which was released in August of 2020, long after their arrest. Looking at the numbers it did, it was definitely a hit, but I read that the audio of the song was a few years old, so it seems like they were digging in some crates to put something out for their fans.
Hey, as long as it's a hit, that's all that matters. No matter how long it was. Hits are timeless.
Similar to Young Lava, K-Money and Casper were also the subjects of a Trap Geek video, so some of their notoriety surely came from there too. But even before that video, or their crazy police chase, they both already had a buzz, at least in Toronto. Between the two, their music had accumulated millions of views on YouTube, years before they would find themselves in prison for their most recent convictions. This is a tale of a couple more rappers who have potential, but seem to be more focused on the streets above everything, including music. At this point, I probably sound like a broken record, repeating the same things in these videos. But
Kinda
sadly,
do,
it's
bro.
a trend that continues to happen, since being a rapper in Toronto comes with the pressure to be tied up in street politics. And no matter how much attention they get, or what level of success they have, most rappers from the city just can't seem to stay out of trouble. And K-Money and Casper TNG are one of the many examples. In just a few years, they made a name for themselves and elevated to the top, standing side by side with other artists who were blowing up at the time. But their itchy fingers landed them behind bars on some heavy charges. It doesn't pay to be a savage from the six, but it does make a story that others can learn from, and this is it. Now, since they're the most popular rappers statistically that I've covered so far, I'll be focusing on their come up music.
Statistically, they the most popular.
Alright, let's get into
it. They be doing numbers, bro. How many videos they got to hit a milli already?
Age 24 are brothers who are originally from the Regent Park area of Toronto. Now, I don't mean to be redundant, but I'll repeat what you already know. Regent Park is one of the roughest.
They were originally from Regent?
But it used to be worse.
Wow, that would have been crazy.
Definitely no walk in the park, and it's the place where K-Money and Casper spent their early life. They live with their mom and their dad named Jeremy Robinson, who is also a musician. Back in the day, Jeremy rapped under the name Lyric J, but is more recently known as Brother J. He was one of 4 members in a Toronto hip-hop group from the 90s called Too Bad to Be True, or TBTBT.
Okay.
In 1993, the group dropped an album called One Track Mind, which received a significant amount of airtime on Much Music, and in 1994, it won a Juno Award for Rap Recording of the Year. It looks like the group has since split
that shit's
up,
in their
but
blood.
over the last decade, Brother J has still been active, releasing music on platforms like YouTube and SoundCloud, and he even put out an EP in 2015 called The Hip Hop Soul. With their dad
you should have been in your kids' lives instead of putting out music, bro.
Got their inspiration. In an interview with We Love Hip Hop Network, Casper described how their dad was constantly in his home studio and would always be recording. They would often listen to his new songs and give feedback. But their dad wasn't the only person who influenced the two brothers. Casper said he grew up listening to different genres of music, from soul to 1990s R&B to old school hip hop. And back in the day, he was also a fan of Chris Brown. He talked about how one Christmas he used the
he had a very
taste
taste of music, man.
On Casper's official website, he writes that once he got older, he started listening to newer artists like Drake, Future, French Montana, Max B, Gucci Mane.
Casper is the Toronto Future, man.
Well, like Casper, he grew up listening to basically everything. But he said that since he's fairly young, he didn't really listen to old school stuff, but instead more recent music. He mentioned tuning into rappers like Drake, Lil Wayne, Tyga, and other members of YMCMB. The variety of different styles and artists they listen to is likely what helped them develop their own unique sound, a sound that set them apart from others. But we'll get more into the music side of things in a bit, because despite having access to a studio at a young age, the brothers didn't actually start rapping until they were in their teens. Before that, they seemed to be having a rough time in their neighborhood of Regent Park. So as I mentioned earlier, K-Money and Casper's dad was in TBTBT, but he also had connections to another local rap group, named Point Blank, which was composed of 6 MCs.
A lot of y'all been
and
asking
one
me to
in-house
check out
producer.
Point Blank.
They
I
were
will
another
in the
music
future.
clique from Regent
I've
Park
been wanting to
in the
react to
90s
Point
and early
Blank.
2000s, known for songs like Born and Raised in the Ghetto, Life 2002, Want It With Us, and more. Since their music was brought into modern times with the help of YouTube, they've collected over 1 million views, and back then, the group was definitely ambitious. They claimed that they were the first real street rappers from the city to try and break into the mainstream, and quote-unquote put the hood into HMV. So Jeremy, aka Brother J, wasn't directly in the group, but he did have some ties to them. He featured on a few of their tracks, such as Loyalty and Want It With Us, which was referred to by some people as the Regent Park anthem. Well, it turns out whatever link Brother J did have with the group may have caused some problems for not only himself, but also for K-Money and Casper. Apart from the rap group Point Blank, there was also a Regent Park gang called the Point Blank Soldiers. Now, I'm not 100% sure if the rap group and the gang are connected, but it does look like it, considering the names are practically identical. The gang was formed in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, and proved themselves to be violent and territorial. They were just one of the many gangs in Regent Park that turned the area into a hotspot for crime, through drug trafficking, shootings, and everything in between. The Point Blank Soldiers had underlying tension with another gang in the area, the Silent Soldiers. The two forces used to be allies and operate as one, but in 2003 they split up and became separate entities and enemies. These were the gangs involved in the highly publicized case of Jane Kariba, a 15-year-old girl who was tragically killed after being caught in the crossfire of a downtown gunfight.
She
It
was
happened on
white
Boxing
too?
Day in
Oh,
December of
man.
2005. Later down the line,
You know the
Silent
boys
Soldiers
ended up
would become known as Sick
going hard
Dogs
on that.
and hold their reputation of being a deadly group. Long story short, the Point Blank Soldiers definitely had some internal beef within Regent Park, not to mention with other hoods in the city. And this is when I get into the rumors and speculation. So Brother J's involvement with Point Blank may have become an issue for K-Money and Casper. It's reported that they would be harassed and even bullied in Regent Park. A fairly new rapper from the area, Lil Barrett, addressed the topic when he went live on Instagram one night. After K-Money dissed him in a comment, Lil Barrett went on a rant targeting him and Casper. He claims that the two would often be harassed and robbed, and there's a bunch of comments all over the internet basically saying the same thing. There are also allegations that another rapper from Regent Park, named YH, was one of the people who picked on the brothers. It's said that Casper's Louis Vuitton belt was taken by YH, who later flaunted with it around his waist in a music video. Another local rapper, known as Rax or Big Rax, allegedly had some problems with K-Money, but before that, they used to play basketball together. A Reddit user even claims that one day, K-Money fired shots at Rax, who was standing outside of Regent Park Community Center a few years ago. On top of everything, there's a lot of people saying that the brothers are quote-unquote Regent rejects. Not my words. And for another
It makes sense
disclaimer,
now why
as I
they
said, these
were
are just
beefing.
internet comments that have been thrown around by anonymous users. These could just be people who have a personal vendetta against the brothers, or there could be more to the story. I personally don't know what parts are true or false. I'm just bringing forward the information and putting it on the table. So take it with a grain of salt and don't shoot the messenger. Anyways, it was reported that K-Money and Casper's parents had divorced when they were in their teens, so that could have been a reason why they moved out of Regent Park. Their dad stayed in the area while their mom moved to Riverdale, a neighborhood just east of Regent Park, over the Don River. But instead of going with their mom or staying with their dad, the brothers headed to a community housing project in Alexandra Park called Atkinson Co-op. There it said they lived with their grandma, while they got accustomed to the change of scenery and made some new friends. But like Regent Park, Alexandra Park is also a rough part of the city, due to it being the stomping grounds for a notorious gang called PO or Project Originals. Coincidentally, PO was knee-deep in a conflict with Regent Park, the place where K-Money and Casper probably had a hatred for. I'm guessing that's what caused the brothers
Crazy.
to naturally integrate into
When you
PO.
grow up hating the hood
Had
you
a
from,
chance to be on an opposing side of Regent Park, and joining PO was the perfect way. Now there's obviously much more to the beef, which consists of multiple different cliques going at each other, but that's a whole different story. I recommend Hood Chronicles video on the topic for anyone interested in knowing more about it. But for now, let's stay on course. So eventually, a group of members within PO, including K-Money and Casper, banded together and decided to create a new subset that would be named Menace Gang, or MG for short. The gang is definitely still rooted in the streets, but they also became known as a music group as well. With efforts from K-Money and Casper, as well as other MG artists like RK and Rolex Hami, they promoted their group and made MG4L a household name in Toronto. You can identify an MG member by not only their trademark forearm tattoo, but also by the amount of attention they get on their videos, easily averaging hundreds of thousands of views, if not millions. But when they're not putting out content, they're making appearances on the news from their antics in the streets.
Yeah,
One example is Rolex Hami, who is recently in the spotlight for not only making a tweet threatening people in Regent Park or releasing the song Avengers K, which set the city on fire and wreaked havoc, but also for being wanted on an attempted murder charge from December of last year. Needless to say, Menace Gang has some hostile members within its ranks. Even though K-Money and Casper once lived in Regent Park, it was obvious they wanted nothing to do with the area and ended up being on the front lines of a battle against them. Ultimately, some of their history is kind of confusing, at least from what I could find online. It seems like throughout their life, the brothers jumped around from place to place and lived all over the GTA. It's said that they spent some time in Brampton and even up in Richmond Hill. I'm not sure why they bounced back and forth from Alexandra Park, but Casper mentions in a track that his grandma passed away, so that could have something to do with it.
Damn.
At some point though, they moved in with their mom in Riverdale, in a house near Broadview and Gerrard Street East. Let's just say they had an eventful few years at the house, and ended up having to move out, but we'll get back to that later on.
I
so
heard
keep it in
about
your
that.
mind.
They
For
shot
now,
up
to
his
make
crib,
things
huh?
simpler, I'm gonna divide the video into focusing on one brother at a time. We'll start with the younger one, K-Money. Let's go back in time and take a look at his come up, as well as his history in the streets. So I already went over some of his musical influences, but even then, he didn't dip his toe in rap until long after Casper did. In that same interview, K-Money even says that he never would have got into music in the first place, if it wasn't for his brother taking the first leap. After Casper scoped out the music scene, K-Money decided to have a crack at it himself. In March of 2016, he made his first appearance on YouTube, when he featured on Up, alongside his brother and fellow MG associates Sizzle and RK. One particular person, Sizzle, was getting a ton of backlash in the comments over his part of the song.
I remember
A lot
that.
of people thought his verse wasn't up to par with the others, and it's even said that he was removed from the Apple Music, SoundCloud, and Spotify versions of the track.
It didn't do nothing for me.
Regardless, it still managed to rake in over 3.5 million views, and was definitely a good start for K-Money.
3 M's?
A month later, in April of 2016, he dropped Dat Ninja, which is actually the first song he ever recorded in a studio, before Up. It garnered over 1.5 million views, and again featured Casper as well as RK. Many seasoned Toronto rappers don't get that amount of views, so it's surprising that K-Money's first few releases were that successful. He was already being recognized as a new face in the city, alongside Casper, who was already a few years deep in the game at that point. K-Money continued to make progress, linking up with Six Broths Premieres to release Rich, as well as featured on a bunch of songs on Casper's 2016 mixtape, MG4L. After dropping a handful of music, K-Money unfortunately got caught up in some legal issues. He was arrested on drug trafficking charges as a youth offender and ended up doing a 1-year stint in a juvenile detention center. There are not many details of the arrests, but he said that he got out in the summer of 2017, weeks before his 18th birthday. Once he was free, he got right back in the studio and resumed making music. He immediately put out a track called Ride, which was supposedly a diss track towards Regent Park rapper Puffy Els, but more so against Halal Gang, which is one of P.O.'s top rivals. After that, in September of 2017, he would drop one of the most notable records in underground Canadian hip-hop, Come Outside. The song quickly took Toronto and eventually the whole country by storm. To this day, it's comfortably sitting at over 13 million views.
13 M's?
Aside from being a catchy song, it was apparently a diss aimed at Regent Park as a whole, taunting
That's
the
nothing to
rivals
scoff
by
at.
asking them to come outside. Regardless of what it meant, it made history as one of the most viral songs to come out of the city, that even had people who were completely oblivious to any street politics tuning in for a listen. From there, K-Money continued to ride his wave, and a few months later he followed up with Was It Worth It, and then Hurt You, that featured a rapper named Young Tory.
Was It Worth It is my favorite K-Money track.
How far K-Money's name had reached. Both songs got millions of views, which seemed to become the norm anytime he dropped something. All in all, there's no doubt that things were looking good for K-Money. He was the talk of the town and had a large fan base tuning in and supporting him. People from all over Toronto were showing love. His music was even played at a Maple Leafs and Raptors game, which is certainly an achievement for any underground rapper.
Hell yeah.
But shortly after releasing Hurt You, things would take a turn for the worse, and K-Money found himself at the center of a serious court case. In late March of 2018, he was arrested alongside 2 others as part of a human trafficking investigation. Police alleged that in November of 2017, K-Money and 2 Brampton men forced 2 young women, one aged 17, the other 18, to work as escorts against their will.
Damn.
One of the women in question
Can't
was
get
able
behind
to
that,
escape
bro.
the hotel that she was being held, and later contacted the police, which is what led to all of their arrests. As part of the investigation, the police executed multiple search warrants and seized a loaded Norinco long-barreled rifle and a large quantity of crack. A 2016 Nissan Maxima was also seized. The 2 men shared 27 charges, while K-Money only had 4, including assault, forcible confinement, and failure to comply with probation. K-Money spent about a month in custody before he was released on what I'm assuming was bail, but his case was still very much active. Years later, in March of 2020, while he was already in prison for his car chase convictions, all of the offenses related to the human trafficking case were withdrawn, while the 2 other men involved pleaded guilty to their charges. One of them was handed 9 years, the other a 1-year sentence. K-Money claims that the cops gave him a quote-unquote
fake charge, you know what I'm saying? Like one of those ones.
And his lawyer, Jack Verk, said that he believes his client was a police target only because he was a successful rapper.
Of course.
So let's head back to April.
Shout out his lawyer, man.
When K-Money was
Lawyer
fresh out
came
of
through.
jail. Once on road, he instantly dropped Bang Bang, which definitely let his audience know that he was back. Like most of his other songs, the video surpassed over 1 million views.
Damn.
He demonstrated his consistency in making hits.
He could sneeze
He
on a
also
track
put
and
out
he'll do
No
1 million, huh?
Which was a song on 6buzz's debut compilation album, 6 Upside Down, released in October of 2018. Since then, K-Money has hopped on several songs with other artists, as well as dropped an assortment of his own singles, and released a project in June of 2019 called Money Mixtape. That brings us to his most recent major release, which was Like Me. But obviously at some point in between, K-Money ended up getting arrested with Casper after their action-packed police chase. In addition to that, it was reported by his lawyer that K-Money was also under investigation for a .44 Magnum that was found around Kensington Market in September of 2017. So before we get to the climax of the video, which is the big pursuit, let's take a further look into Casper and go over his side of the story. So we're now on to the older brother, Casper TNG, or the neighborhood ghost, also known as Mr. Walk 'em Down. He said he decided to make Casper his main nickname, well, because
Sometimes you see me, sometimes you don't. Also, because the complexion of my skin is a little lighter than other black people.
So unlike K-Money, who's fairly new to rap, Casper's been at it for almost a decade. He made his official introduction in July of 2013 with a mixtape that he released on Dat Piff called Menace to Society, which included 14 tracks. He chose one of them, called Get 'Em, to partner with a music video and uploaded it to YouTube, making a second debut but on a different platform. The video got over 100,000 views, which was a humble start, and only set the stage for what was next to come. He followed up with an album of 15 tracks called Ghost Town Volume 1, and once
Okay,
again
he came
put
out
the
with an
song to
album.
compare with visuals. He chose In My City, and in September of 2014, he put out the video, which got the same amount of attention as his last release. A few months later, in December, Casper partnered with Sunny Visual and dropped All About Me, which again totaled around 100,000 views. He was picking up some traction, but the process was about to be expedited the following year, in February of 2015. Casper recalls that one morning he decided to smoke a blunt, likely a backwoods, before heading to school. After his wake and bake, suddenly a chorus for a song came to him. He decided to skip class so he could write down the lyrics before they left his mind. The lyrics that he wrote ended up being the hook that would jumpstart his career. He recorded the track Dope Boy and then partnered with 6buzz Premieres and released it on their channel. It reached over 750,000 views within a month, which could be considered viral, at least for underground rap.
750,000 a month?
4.5 million views and counting, and it still remains one of his most popular songs to date. A couple of months after dropping that gem, Casper put out another volume of Ghost Town, which had 6 songs. He was productive in 2015 and made good use of the clout he acquired from Dope Boy. He spent the rest of the year putting out well over a dozen notable songs matched with videos. Some were more popular than others, but the view count was steadily climbing each time. In October of 2015, he released Dope Boy the album, which had some older songs but a few fresh ones too. It looked like Casper was finishing off the year on a good note, or so he thought. In late December of 2015, it's reported that he was wrongly jailed on robbery and firearm charges. But during the time he was locked up, the channel M-Works released his single again, and then his team uploaded Know Me to his official channel on his behalf. Now Dope Boy is what jump-started Casper's career, but Know Me is what propelled it to another level. The song received more views than his last several releases combined, getting nearly 6 million and rising, making it the most popular on his resume. Once he was out of jail in late January of 2016, he had an even bigger wave to serve and was back at it again. This is around the time that K-Money entered the picture, and they came together to drop Up, and that was the start of their musical chemistry. Besides when the brothers featured together, Casper has a bunch of independent tracks under his belt that he put out that year. Too many to mention in detail, but Oops, Winnin', I Know, and Day Ones are...
Your man got some hits, he got a catalog, yo.
That Casper would have his busiest year yet. He still had hype from Dope Boy and Know Me, amongst other songs, but he was about to add a lot more quality content to his portfolio. He dropped Queen Street West,
Fire.
Unforgettable, Brown Hunnits, Burberry
Fire.
Closet,
Fire.
Freeze, In My
Fire.
Blunt, Can Go On
Fire.
Forever, and I really
Fire.
could go on forever because those
Fire,
ain't
fire,
all.
fire, fire,
For
fire.
the songs in that list that didn't reach millions of views, they got close to it. One of the tracks, Freeze, which came out in September 2017 and featured recently arrested rapper
Pedro.
Top 5, was the first time Casper's music made it onto the Hip Hop Canada's Spotify playlist. Since then, Casper has maintained his presence with tracks like Harmonix Made a Hit, Don't Care Anymore, Still the Same, Have You, Splash,
Still the
and
same?
others.
Never
At
heard of that
time,
one.
Casper and K-Money were already doing shows in Toronto, the GTA, and beyond, and even sold out a show in Ottawa. Needless to say, your name has to ring some bells to get to that level. Overall, it's hard not to respect Casper's work ethic when it comes to making music. To this day,
Toronto
he has over
Future,
11
man.
mixtape and
He's the
albums that
Toronto
he's put
Future,
out,
bro.
totaling hundreds of songs. If you compare him to K-Money, it's probably tough to say which brother is the better rapper. But when it comes down to who has the bigger portfolio or more experience, it's
Casper.
gotta be
I gotta go
Casper.
with Casper.
But now that we went over the music aspect of his life, it's time to discuss
they
the
both
mischief
fire.
in his past. I mentioned the short time that he wrongfully spent in jail, but there's definitely more on his rap sheet. So let's go back in time once again and look at things from another perspective. So Casper seems to have quite the criminal history, with minor offenses dating as far back as 2013. In August of that year, Casper ripped a cell phone out of a girl's hand and was later charged with robbery.
Damn,
3 years
Cass.
later, in July of 2015,
You
Casper
stealing
was one of the
phones from these
assailants who
hoes?
jumped a man, in which the victim was stabbed and suffered a cracked rib. He was charged with aggravated assault, robbery, and conspiracy to commit an indictable offense. This was around
Conspiracy
the
to
time when
commit
K-Money and
indictable
Casper moved in
offense?
with
What
their
the fuck
mom
is
in
that?
Riverdale. And remember how I said they had an eventful few years there? Well, apparently their gang ties and any politics that came with it had followed them to their new home. It's said that rocks were constantly being thrown at their house, and in a more serious incident that happened in May of 2016, their mom's house was shot up, which ended up killing the family cat that was inside. These occurrences eventually led to K-Money and Casper moving out, which was probably for their family's safety, since it's reported that their mom had several of her other children living there too. For the rest of the summer, that area in Riverdale saw 3 separate shootings, and there was even a news article reporting on it. I don't know if the incidents are connected to K-Money and Casper, but they stick out in what otherwise looks like a quiet residential neighborhood. I mean, there's a church right on the corner of where one of the shootings went down, but unfortunately it didn't deter the gunman. Anyways, a court document says that the brothers moved back in with their dad, but I'm not sure if he still lived in Regent Park or not. But it's also possible they already had their own place, since there's an apartment linked to them on the books. In June of 2016, the police were working with a confidential source who was able to provide them with a bunch of information that ultimately led to a search warrant.
A confidential
The police
source? Just say
executed the raid
snitch.
on a unit at 150 Dan Leckie Way, an upscale condo located in downtown Toronto, near Fort York Boulevard and Bathurst Street. The address was said to be associated with both Casper and K-Money, and was considered by authorities to be a stash house. Well, the police entered the unit, but no one was inside at the time, and no arrests were made. About 1 year later, in July of 2017, the police got the green light for another warrant at the same address.
Damn, they kept
They once
targeting
again
these
made their way
dudes.
into the unit, but this time it wasn't vacant. They found Casper sitting with his pregnant girlfriend on the couch. The police searched the kitchen and saw a bunch of bad crack on the dining table, and inside one of the kitchen cabinets was a bunch of other drugs. Officers continued looking around the apartment and entered one of the bedrooms. They immediately noticed a handgun lying on a mattress in plain sight. In the bedroom closet, they found several rounds of ammunition, as well as bullets scattered on the floor. Along with that, there were 4 cell phones and 5 digital scales found. The result of the raid was the police seizing a 1911 handgun, 8 rounds of 45 caliber ammo, 5 rounds of 40 caliber ammo, a few grams of coke and fentanyl, along with $860 in cash. The police also found 116 grams of what was only described as being a doughy white substance, so who knows what that was. The court file states that Casper was charged with possessing a loaded firearm, possession of crack and fentanyl with the purpose of trafficking, and possessing proceeds of crime. He was released on bail, and it wasn't until he was already behind bars for the car chase that he would go to trial for these charges. In April of 2019, Casper pled guilty to the offenses, and with time spent in pretrial custody, along with any other credits, his sentence was 2 years, which was to be served concurrently with his most recent charges.
At least it was
In court,
concurrent.
It was mentioned that Casper had over 200 volunteer hours in the Gentleman's SWAT, which was a mentoring program for youth, hosted at St. Stephen's Community House. One of his old co-workers described Casper as being not only a gifted musician, but a community-minded, kind young man. So I thought I'd bring up something positive before we move on to the next segment of the video, which is basically the complete opposite. We've now arrived at the big day, May 28, 2018. That afternoon, there were some officers and unmarked police cars patrolling Regent Park and the surrounding area. There had been a recent shooting the night before, so they're on high alert and suspected that something may occur in the near future, and they were right. They noticed a black SUV, and one of the passengers inside was wearing a ski mask, looking more than suspicious. According to Casper, the police were already onto them before anything even went down, but it's not clear how far away they were. This is when the surveillance video captures the story. So I know you've already seen it, but for good measures, let's break down the footage of the chase once again. So it starts with a man in white shorts walking across the frame, who is the target of the shooting. We then see the same man sprinting down the sidewalk, chased by an armed masked suspect who fired a single shot but missed. You see bystanders crouch for cover as the gunman, who is K-Money, appears in the video carrying a Wild Western type of revolver. Meanwhile, the getaway car, a rented Volkswagen Tiguan, is seen slowly creeping through traffic while waiting on their accomplice. Casper is seen in the passenger seat looking back down the street as his brother conducts his drill. Then the car suddenly reverses as civilians scramble to get inside of a store for cover. K-Money then hopped back in the car before it peeled off down Parliament Street. This is when the video cuts to the perspective of the police. We see an unmarked Grand Caravan directly behind the suspect's vehicle, while a patrol car cuts off their SUV from the front. It looked like they were trapped at first, but the driver managed to squeeze his way between the cars, while plainclothes officers lunged out of the vehicles with guns drawn. We then get another perspective of the chase from yet another cruiser.
Niggas said not
The
today.
suspects started speeding down Shooter Street as they swerved around ongoing cars. They zoomed down a long stretch of open road with the police in close pursuit. Moments later, they are forced to make a badly executed right turn due to a car in front of them. The SUV then hits a bet car, and ironically, they're the ones playing Crazy Taxi today. The driver continues evading, now driving on the wrong side of the street. They managed to weave in and out of cars and nearly escape the cruiser, but there was a lot of congested traffic since it was downtown during a summer afternoon. With the road clogged up and nowhere else to go, there was only one option left. The driver decided to mount the curb and drive down the sidewalk. You see a woman who was narrowly missed by the SUV as it speeds by with its bumper hanging on by a thread. Then from some random camera on a building rooftop, the suspect vehicle is seen trying to make a left turn onto Mutual Street, but the driver faced some understeer and the vehicle turned too wide and
Wow, what a
stalling the
bozo.
engine. All the doors flung open as suspects jumped out from each side of the car and took off. A cruiser arrived moments later, and that's when the on-foot portion of the chase began.
They should have
The
stood in the
suspect
car.
got out, but the police stayed in their cars at first. You can see them running down the street as police close in on them. Moments later, K-Money and Casper are seen running through the parking entrance of a building. Another angle shows them in a full sprint trying to evade the officers. We then see one make their way through a grass area on a light jog, appearing to already be out of breath. The video then cuts to a clip that shows one of the men sitting on a curb handcuffed. Another one of the suspects, who was RK, ran into a parking lot near a construction site, and it looks like he was flustered. He headed into the back entrance of a business, which was an espresso bar, but he comes out within seconds, so I'm guessing it was a dead end. He walked around the parking lot a while longer before an unmarked police car pulled up, and officers got out with their weapons in hand. RK then climbed over the fence and jumped into the construction site. He ran through the dirt and mud while a few workers watched in confusion. He got to the other side of the site and nearly made it to the exit, but he was met by several officers waiting on the other side, who quickly swarmed him. Just
Damn.
for a fun fact, the almost empty construction site is now already a gigantic building. So 2 suspects were captured, and the next clip shows us what happened to the remaining 2. A cruiser pulled up as K-Money and Casper lay handcuffed and face down on the concrete, looking absolutely defeated. The whole chase lasted just a few short minutes, and the police were able to apprehend all the suspects involved. Thankfully, no one was injured when K-Money fired that shot, or from all of that erratic stunt driving. And it's actually fortunate that the pursuit took place downtown, which is probably what helped end it in a timely fashion. If you've ever driven around downtown in Toronto, especially during rush hour, you know that it's a pain to get around, let alone if you're trying to get away from the cops. To pull off something like that, you'd have to be a Fast and Furious character, or that Baby Driver guy. And the suspect behind the wheel that day
Baby
definitely
Driver.
was.
That was a
Anyways,
good
all 4
movie.
of the perps were arrested and booked into jail, and 2 firearms were recovered. One in the crashed getaway car, and another was found on a suspect. A few onlookers managed to snag pictures of the scene, as well as a video of K-Money while he was being loaded in a cruiser, and a screenshot hit the internet. But the first official word of his arrest came the next day. The story quickly made headlines, getting picked up by major news outlets from all over the city. Details started to surface, such as Casper requesting that the police inform Toronto Star of his arrest because he wanted the clout for when he dropped his next banger, which ended up being the following day while he was in custody. The banger in question was Have You, and he raps about running down his rivals and shooting at them, something that his brother had just did the day before. The men were facing dozens of charges between them, most of which were multiple counts. Then 21-year-old Shaquem Anderson, who was the driver, had 20 of the charges against him. 20-year-old Harlan Baldwin, aka RK, held 21 charges.
Damn.
He was the suspect who had a gun on him when he was caught.
21
K-Money
charges?
and Casper were facing 14 and 15 charges respectively, including pointing a firearm, possessing a weapon for dangerous purposes, and assault with the intent to resist and endanger life. Half of the men would remain in jail until they faced trial, while the other half were fortunate enough to get bailed out. RK, as well as the driver Shaquem, were released just 2 weeks after being arrested, which sparked controversy and became the subject of a news article. The article questioned how Shaquem managed to be granted bail, despite having prior gun convictions and being in the middle of 3 years probation, not to mention he had a weapons ban. K-Money and Casper would remain behind bars for a year or so, until the group would meet back up for their trial in the fall of 2019. But before getting to the verdict of the case, let's quickly go over the motive that was behind the shooting. Well, the night before it happened, on May 27, 2018, there was a shooting in the Alexandra Park area, around Augusta and Grange Avenue, which is in the heart of PO turf. One male was injured, but the report didn't give much detail. This is the event that allegedly provoked Casper, K-Money, and their crew to target their rivals from Regent Park, the ones who they thought were responsible for the attack. This theory of retaliation was even brought forward in court, but was never proven, and we'll discuss that more in the verdict part. But as you know, PO has an everlasting beef with Regent Park, which over the years has involved several different rappers who go at each other in songs and on social media. I'm not going to dive too deep into the rabbit hole, but Smoke Dogg is obviously someone who I should bring up in the story. He was an up-and-coming rapper from Regent Park who was steadily climbing the charts, around the same time Casper and K-Money were too, while Smoke Dogg was an avid member of Halal Gang, a group that doesn't take kindly to members of Project Originals, and vice versa. Now there was a bunch of drama revolving around Smoke Dogg's chain being snatched, and I won't go too much into it, but eventually the chain ended up in the possession of Casper and another rapper from PO, named Vanali Stacks. All of these rappers and opposing gangs share years of built-up tension, and MG members deciding to go on a mission that day, or the shooting that happened the night before, are just a few of the many incidents linked to the beef. About a month after K-Money and Casper got arrested, Smoke Dogg would film his last music video, Fountain Freestyle, which had a few shots of him standing outside of Atkinson Co-op building, which was a blatant diss towards PO, and it was possibly also a tease towards K-Money and Casper's arrest. Less than a week after dropping the video, Smoke Dogg was killed in a brazen downtown shooting on June 30th, 2018. With the dates being so close together, it would look like the music video and his murder were connected, but they weren't. PO isn't the only enemy of Halal Gang. They also have problems with gangs from Driftwood, which is where the shooter, 21 Neat, was from. It's said that there was a brief argument before 21 Neat shot Smoke Dogg and his manager, Cobra Prime, in an event that was seemingly unrelated to Fountain Freestyle. So with that out of the way, we're now at the verdict. So Casper and K-Money, along with the two other accused, appeared in Supreme Court in late September of 2019 to stand trial. All of the CCTV and dashcam footage of the incident was brought forward in the trial, along with other evidence. Casper claims that 90% of the prosecutor's evidence was related to lyrics in his songs, which is probably an exaggeration, but we do know that music is often used against rappers in court. The Crown was trying to prove that the shooting was linked to the one that happened the night before in Alexandra Park. More so, they were trying to prove that it was gang related, and that the men were part of a criminal organization. Fortunately for the accused, the allegations weren't able to be proven, at least beyond a reasonable doubt, which would have tacked on a lot more years to the men's sentences.
They lucky for that.
But it turns out that the defendants weren't looking to put up much of a legal fight. In early October, after 2 weeks of proceedings, all four men decided to take responsibility for their actions and pled guilty to a variety of offenses. Shaquem pled guilty to charges including dangerous driving and fleeing police. He was sentenced to 4 years. RK admitted to carrying a loaded Smith & Wesson handgun that day and was also sentenced to 4 years. Casper pled guilty to a wide range of charges, like committing an offense while wearing a disguise, bail breaches, and firearm offenses. The judge gave him 18 months, on top of the 2-year sentence he received for the prior drug and weapon convictions from April. K-Money pled guilty to similar charges, and also reckless discharge of a firearm. He was the one who pulled the trigger that day, so understandably he received the heaviest sentence out of the group, 7 years.
Damn.
With pretrial custody that currently leaves him with just a few years left to serve. The official Canley documents for the case haven't yet been put out, so it's not reported which exact charges they were convicted of. K-Money's lawyer said that the prosecutors were aiming for a 15-year sentence, so it was fortunate that the number was knocked in half. Jack Verk also defended K-Money on his human trafficking charges, And in the past, he's had other clients from the city, like Houdini and Baka Not Nice.
I hope
So in
top 5 gets him as a
whether or
lawyer.
not the group settled for revenge that day, whatever they were trying to do definitely didn't go as planned. They made an effort to get away, but they probably wished that they chose a faster getaway car than a Volkswagen Tiguan. A
Facts.
few minutes of adrenaline.
Niggas
cost
is
them
doing
years
drills in a
prison.
Volkswagen.
In an interview with a channel called Capital T Films, Casper speaks live from behind bars about different topics, including his conviction. He said that he wants people to use him, K-Money, and RK as examples, since they are rappers who are on the rise, but mess things up for themselves by getting arrested. On the other hand, he mentions how street politics in Toronto is something that's not going away anytime soon. And he even said he believes it's getting worse. But overall, from what I can take from the interview, it does seem like Casper's maturing, and hopefully he'll have a different mindset once he gets out, which could be soon. Until then, Casper noted that he won't be dropping any more new music, and basically said he's just gonna milk the buzz he already has until the day he's free. It's a shame that he would openly throw away prime years of his career over street beef, especially since it said he was in talks with 2 labels. Some people believe he'll get signed when he gets out, while others believe that labels will see him as a liability. Regardless, let's just hope he focuses on the
Labels will see him as a liability. If you're gonna say that, you can say that about any rapper. Any rapper is a liability because they all rap about the same shit. They all in some kind of politics. They all involved with something. So you can't just say because of that he's a liability. If anything, they will capitalize off of that shit. 6ix9ine, he's a liability. He could die any fucking day now. You know what I'm saying? Because of what he did, people that want to hurt him, but he still has deals. Like, I don't look at it as a liability. If anything, that adds to your rap sheet,
right things,
your
once
street
he's a free man
credibility.
again. As for K-Money, well, he has the longest bid out of the group, but even then, he's still due to be out in a few years. Unlike Casper, K-Money didn't give an interview from prison, so I don't really know his thoughts about what happened. Since being incarcerated, he's made posts showing appreciation to his fans and supporters for sticking by him. In one post, he said that if Come Outside reaches 20 million views, he'll stop gangbanging. I think that's a strange form of motivation, but it's something, I guess.
Get him
The
to
video
20
just
million
needs
views,
about
y'all.
6,258,000 more views for K-Money to make a positive life decision. Even if he doesn't reach that goal, I hope he'll still try to get his act together, at least for his fans that want to continue getting music. Since being in prison, both K-Money and Casper have still occasionally been releasing music, but most, if not all of it, is pre-recorded. The releases are obviously helping them stay in the game, but as I said earlier, I think they can only get so far while they're still behind bars. That being said, they for sure still have their head above water. A user on the Torontology Reddit put together a neat list of Toronto rappers' monthly Spotify listeners, and K-Money and Casper still hold a decent position on the charts, even though they've been incarcerated for over 2 years now. By the way, the list was tracked from just Spotify listeners, so it doesn't include other platforms like Apple Music, YouTube, and SoundCloud. At the time of their arrest, the two were definitely blowing up, and they shared an audience that was not only large but also diverse. There's people from the hood all the way to frat houses that tune into the brothers. Casper even has Minecraft YouTubers using his tracks as background music. So it's clear his content made it to the ears of different demographics. They brought a new sound to Toronto rap and took a melodic approach that hasn't yet been duplicated. In one of their interviews, the two give credit to Blunts and Lean for their musical creativity, but I think that takes away from the actual talent that they have. But in the end, they already spoiled a big opportunity with the US market, because with their recent convictions, they won't be able to cross the border. Now it's just a question of if they want to spoil their chances in Canada too. Only time will tell how the brothers will behave once they finally get out. At the end of the day, for a rapper who considers themselves to be from the streets, having a criminal record is almost like a rite of passage. That's probably why it's called a rap sheet. Well, actually it stands for records of arrests and prosecutions, but still it's a coincidence. It looks like a bunch of K-Money and Casper songs were Regent Park disses, so they essentially built a career off of street beef. And I mean, you can't blame them. That's just what seems to get attention, and that's what sells. But it also boxes them into a certain category, where people will be expecting them to continue dissing other hoods, and basically continue getting themselves into trouble. Sooner than later, the brothers will be coming home from prison, and only then will we see if they can break the cycle.
Alright, man, that was a long video. The best thing out of this video to me was the fact that I found out that they came from Regent Park. Like, that's very shocking. And it was crazy to learn that they actually was from Regent, given the history that they have with Regent, the beef and shit, and that was just crazy. But this was a well put together video. I think it was an awesome video, a lot of information in it. I mean, it was long. I think he could have shaved at least 20 minutes off this video and still get the same impact and still give us the same information. But it was good. I like the information he gave us. I like learning about their musical influences. You know, their father was a musician, and he had a Juno. He's linked with Point Blank, which some of y'all asked me to react to. So eventually I'll get to that. But yeah, man, I still feel like they still gonna be relevant when they come out. I mean, Casper, he comes out this year. He's still gonna be relevant. He just got to put out music. It sucks that he can't come to the States, though. I didn't know that he wouldn't be able to come to the States because, you know, I was banking on that. You know, that would have been the best move for him to get out of Toronto, go to the United States, and try to pursue his music career. But yeah, man, you already know. I still feel like they're gonna be relevant. I still feel like they're some of the hottest to put out music, and sometimes a jail bid actually helps. So y'all let me know what y'all think about this in the comments down below. If you're new to the channel, hit the like button, subscribe. It's your boy Dollars. Mahalo.